So here's our employee department app, and as we know, we've changed this so that if we go into a particular person, then when we look at the job field, we've turned the job field into a enumerated list. So we can only pick a job which is a sort of an approved job. People can't type their own jobs in or make up jobs. They have to be one from an enumerated list. But let's look at some of the other fields that we have here and see what other issues we might have with data integrity. Now I'm specifically going to look at department number here. Obviously department number corresponds to, we have a department table and we've got a bunch of departments, and what we have is obviously there are some departments and they're identified by number, like 1, 2 in this particular example here, and we have an association with people. We know that people belong to a particular department, and the way that this is done currently here, the way that we set it up originally, was the department number is a integer field. But our problem, of course, is that somebody could come in and they could go, let's put this person in department 7. And of course, department 7 doesn't really exist, which is an issue. Now, what we could do is we could turn it into an enumerated list. We could restrict the values that we allow department number to become. But of course, the problem with this is that department numbers change. So we actually have a department number table. So if we go into the employee page and the data structure that underlies this, and we say this is just going to be an enumerated list, it's not going to be able to take into account any future changes. So the way that we're going to do this is slightly different to the way that we did the job field. Now I'm just going to bring up an Access database and talk about this in a little bit more detail. Let's imagine we had an Access database, and here's the sort of corresponding data structures that we're dealing with in our app. So we've got our department table, and it's got department numbers, department name and locations. And we've got employees, and what we would normally do, well, this is certainly one way that we could approach this, is you'll notice we've got the department number here, that's our primary key, our unique identifier for this table, and we've got employee number, which is our primary key, the unique identifier for this table. But what we do is we lift the department number and we place it inside the emp table as a foreign key. Now by doing that, what that does is that restricts the way that we can actually enter, input and use the department number inside the emp table. So this sort of corresponds to what we've got so far in our Mendix setup, because we've actually got department number as a distinct item. Now Mendix does this slightly differently. Rather than actually having an explicit department number, what we're going to do is we're going to do that by using what's known as a relationship inside the domain model. So I'm going to go into Mendix. Here it is, and here's my domain model. So I can make this slightly larger. We're going to focus on these two tables here. Now currently we've got department number explicitly as a column, as an attribute in the domain model. And what we really need to do is not have that here. What we really want is we want to sort of create a relationship to the department table to suggest that the department number inside employee is actually the department number from the other table. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go into employee and I'm going to change this a little bit. And in fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually delete department number. So I'm going to take it out completely. And you'll see how we sort of do it in a minute. So I'm going to delete here. So I've double tapped, gone into the employee entity. I'm just selected department number and I'm going to delete it like that. And I'm going to save that. Now that's going to create some problems down the line because of course department number is inside our pages that we use inside the interface, but we'll come to that in a moment. Now, if I hover over the edge of one of these entities, you can see that we get a circle. And what we can do with a circle is we can drag from one entity to another like this. And what we're doing is we're saying that there's a relationship between these two tables. Now this is a familiar notation if you've ever used entity relationship diagrams before, but I'm just going to explain what it actually means. This relationship will have a name, and you can see that it's been given a name automatically by Mendix. It's called employee department. And these little circles here, now what these circles actually mean is the number of these items at that end of the thing, at the end of the relationship. So a star means many, and obviously a 1 means 1. So what this is really saying is one department has many employees. So just think about that for a moment. Is that correct? That seems correct, doesn't it? One department has many employees. Now clearly what happens is the way that you drag from one entity to another informs Mendix as to what way round you think the relationship is. And there are all sorts of relationships. There could be one-to-one, one-to-many, many-to-one, many-to-many, and we'll talk about some of those other types of relationships in subsequent sessions. But you could do it this way around. You could go, oh, many departments have one person. And clearly, if you think about that logically, that's not the right way around. What we really want is we want to drag from employee and we drag to department. And that creates that relationship. It says one department has many employees inside it. Now I'm just going to save that. And let's go back to our pages. Now we've got a view employees page. And this is what this looks like. Now this doesn't actually currently have department number in it, so we don't need to worry about that too much at the moment. Really, it's our add edit employee page which is going to make all the difference, because suddenly we don't have a department number column. And you can see obviously Mendix has detected that we changed the domain model, so we've got the little red circle here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to completely delete this because we're going to use a different widget. So I'm going to do a right mouse click and I'm going to delete. Now inside the widgets panel over here, there are obviously all the different types of widgets that we can use. We want to focus on the ones that are inside input elements. These are the ones that are associated with data. Now before we used a text box, but what we're actually going to do this time is we're going to use a different widget. We're going to use a reference selector. And the reference selector will give us a drop-down box, and there's sort of the little iconography on the front of this widget is sort of telling you, sort of hinting at the fact what this is going to do is this is going to enable us to use relationships to sort of pull data from different tables. So I'm just going to drag that over here and I'm going to drop it just below com. Make sure it's inside the data view. Now clearly it doesn't have any attributes selected or associated with it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to double tap to bring up the dialog box, and then under data source you'll see data source attribute path. Now I'm going to tap on this and I'm going to select, and we're going to see something slightly different here. So what this is going to do is it's going to show us a path through a relationship. So we're going from employee through to department, and then here's my department table. Now I'm going to expand this because what I really need to do is I need to say which one of the attributes in department is going to be the one that's going to be pulled through and used inside my employee object when it's being displayed and used. So it's department number. So I'm going to select department number, select OK. Now obviously Mendix does its magic and it's actually determined the name of the field and it's set the relationship up. So I'm just going to save that now. And let's reconstruct the app. So to summarise what we've done, department number in its original form was just a number. We've deleted department number from the emp attribute and from the pages, the support pages. We've put in this reference selector, and what the reference selector is going to use the relationship to actually say department number is what's going to bind these entities together. So just waiting for this to finish. Let's try the app out. So now, if I go into employees and I click on one of the people that already exists, and we can see department is now a drop-down list. And if I tap on here, we can see it says Department 1 and Department 2. So we could say that March is in Department 1. For example, we could go into Burn and we could say that Burn is in Department 2. And it's pulling those values out of our department table. Now we can prove that. So if I click Save, if I go into my departments, let's create a new department. Let's call it 3 sales, and let's put it in leads and click on Save. Now if I go back into the employee table and let's edit one of these. Now if I look at the drop-down list for department, we can see that 3 is now available to us to actually assign people to. So what we've done is we've added this sort of integrity, this validation process. We can only assign someone to Department 3 if the department, obviously that department number has to exist in the department table.